Returning from a routine patient transport mission, flight paramedic Sandra Harris noticed pilot Tom suddenly clutching his chest. "Jake, take control," said the pilot, gasping for breath. When the helicopter began falling out of control over the Rocky Mountains, Sandra immediately sprang into action. "Mayday, mayday, this is Medflight 7. Pilot cardiac arrest making forced landing," she shouted into the radio. "Medflight 7, search and rescue teams dispatched. Weather conditions delaying response. ETA 6 hours, came the reply. 6 hours was too long. The pilot's heart had stopped. Co-pilot Jake was bleeding from head trauma. Sandra was alone in mountain wilderness in sub-zero temperatures. But Sandra did something different. And in the next 6 hours, the mountain rescue team would learn who Sandra Harris really was. Because the way her hands moved in freezing conditions, this wasn't something a normal flight paramedic was used to at all. Welcome to Hidden Legends. Before we continue with this powerful story, tell us in the comments which city you're watching from. And if you believe stories like this should be told, hit that subscribe button. Sandra Harris had been a flight paramedic at Denver Memorial Hospital for 5 years. At 36, she was reliable, always on duty with precise timing. Together with pilot Tom Richardson and co-pilot Jake Morrison, they performed 4 to 6 critical transports daily. "Sandra is one of our most skilled paramedics," said Flight Operations Supervisor Dr. Martinez. "Calm under pressure, advanced medical knowledge, never panics. Critical patients feel safe with her." But Sandra's calm under pressure came from places very different from a normal flight paramedic's experience. The routine of being a flight paramedic was always the same. Shift started at 6 a.m., ended at 6 p.m. Heart attacks, trauma cases, inter-hospital transfers, standard critical care transport. Sandra remained calm and efficient in every situation. Tom found Sandra's behavior in emergency situations different. "Sandra, how do you stay so organized during high-stress moments?" he would ask. "Experience," Sandra would say quietly. "There should be a protocol for every situation." This experience came from a 12-year career in Army Special Forces Medical Corps. Combat medical support and special operations, high-risk extractions, hostile territory medical evacuation. Sandra had conducted operations in the world's most dangerous places. Sandra Harris's real story began 18 years ago. She had joined the military at 19. In her childhood in Denver, Sandra had witnessed mountain rescue operations. When local hikers got into danger, search and rescue teams showed heroic efforts. "I want to save people in extreme situations," she had told the military recruiter. After basic training, Sandra received Medical Corps, then Airborne, Ranger, and eventually Special Forces training. She showed exceptional physical and mental performance. She was selected for Special Operations Medical Support. The Special Operations Medical Selection process was the military's most challenging training. Psychological evaluation, physical endurance tests, advanced medical competency assessment. Sandra ranked in the top 2% among female candidates. Her first deployment was Afghanistan. Combat medical support, casualty evacuation, forward surgical team assistance. During 3 years of deployment, she conducted over 40 successful life-saving operations. Her second deployment was Iraq. Urban warfare medical support, IED attack response, mass casualty incident management. Sandra's specialization was life-saving in chaos and tactical medical evacuation. Her third deployment was classified international operations, hostage rescue medical support, embassy evacuation, high-value target extraction medical coverage. Sandra's most dangerous and critical missions occurred during this period. Sandra's Special Forces training wasn't just combat. Advanced tactical medicine, wilderness survival medical care, multi-casualty management, extreme environment operations, specialized skills. "A Special Operations medic must be a complete medical professional," said Training Commander Major Williams. "Combat surgeon, tactical medic, survival expert, life-death decisions in extreme conditions." Sandra had mastered every aspect of this philosophy. Advanced medical procedures in combat zones, maximum life-saving results with limited resources, extreme weather medical operations. Her medical knowledge was far above paramedic level. The most critical training was wilderness medical operations, mountain environments, extreme cold, limited evacuation options. Sandra learned to treat multiple patients simultaneously in isolated conditions. She had specifically received high-altitude medical emergency training, advanced medical care in oxygen-depleted environments, hypothermia management, survival medicine. These skills would be incredibly valuable in Sandra's civilian flight paramedic work. After 12 years of active duty, Sandra made the decision to retire. Combat stress symptoms, desire for normal life, commitment to peaceful service. She transitioned to emergency medical services. "Why are you leaving the military?" her special operations commander had asked. "Because I want to continue life-saving in peacetime. Same mission, different battlefield." During flight paramedic training, Sandra was overqualified. Advanced medical knowledge, crisis management experience, leadership capabilities. But instructors hadn't asked detailed background questions. "I've always wanted to work in emergency medical services," Sandra had said, "helping people in critical moments." The flight paramedic position was a perfect transition. The military structure felt familiar to Sandra. Emergency response, life-death decisions, precise timing requirements. When Denver Memorial Hospital hired her, Sandra was an exceptional employee. Professional competence, crisis calmness, advanced medical skills. But nobody knew her extraordinary military background. On Tuesday, November 23rd, Sandra was on her normal shift. With Tom and Jake, they had responded to 3 critical transports: heart attack patient, trauma victim, premature birth emergency. Routine but important life-saving missions. The last transport was transferring a ski accident victim from Vail to Denver. It had been a successful mission. Patient stabilized, vital signs improved. At 3:45 p.m., they were returning from the hospital to base. "Good day, Sandra," said Tom, relaxed. "Patient outcomes excellent, weather perfect for flying." "Yes, smooth operations today," said Sandra. But Sandra always monitored the environment, old habits from military service. The flight over the Rocky Mountains appeared normal. But at mile 15, Tom suddenly complained of chest pain. "Jake," said Tom suddenly, his voice strained, "feeling dizzy, chest tight?" Sandra immediately went on alert. She recognized Tom's symptoms: sweating, pallor, shortness of breath, classic acute myocardial infarction presentation. "Tom, chest pain scale 1 to 10? Sandra asked, switching to medical assessment mode. 8, maybe 9? Tom struggled to breathe. Sandra checked Tom's pulse: irregulars, weak, thready, skin cold and clammy, definite cardiac event in progress. "Jake, immediately request emergency landing clearance at nearest hospital," Sandra instructed with authority. But at exactly that moment, Tom collapsed unconscious, the helicopter controls slipping from his hands. The helicopter suddenly banked left and began descending. Jake tried to grab the controls, but Tom's body weight was pressed against the instrument panel. "Sandra, move Tom!" Jake shouted desperately. Sandra, while simultaneously clearing Tom from the control panel, tried to ensure patient safety. In the helicopter's violent motion, Sandra's balance ability was extraordinary, as if she had been trained to work in such situations. Jake recovered the controls, but the aircraft had lost significant altitude and continued descending. "We have to make an emergency landing," he said, looking for flat ground. Below, the snow-covered terrain of the Rocky Mountains stretched endlessly. Jake spotted a small clearing and tried to approach it. "Hard landing coming," he warned Sandra. Sandra secured Tom and the patient. She knew exactly these types of emergency landing procedures. Body position adjusted, impact preparation completed. The helicopter made a hard impact with the ground, several bounces, finally stopped. Rotor blades still rotating, but engine failed. The first seconds were silence. Then, Sandra immediately sprang into action. Tom was unconscious and not breathing. Jake was bleeding from head impact. The patient was in shock. Jake, can you hear me?" Sandra assessed Jake, consciousness clear but concussion symptoms. "Sandra, how's Tom?" Sandra checked Tom's pulse. Absent. Checked his breathing. Absent. "Tom is in cardiac arrest, starting CPR," said Sandra. But Sandra's CPR technique was completely different from normal. Chest compressions were perfect depth and rhythm. Ventilation technique was professional level, and she was simultaneously conducting environmental threat assessment. Jake, try the radio, position report and assistance request. Jake reached for the radio. Mayday, Mayday, Medflight 7. Engine failure, forced landing. Pilot cardiac arrest, co-pilot injured, requesting immediate rescue. Medflight 7, message received. Search and rescue teams dispatching. Weather conditions causing delays, ETA 6 hours. 6 hours. Sandra evaluated the situation. Outside temperature minus 15 degrees, wind 50 kilometers per hour, snow beginning. Tom's survival required continuous CPR and advanced life support. Jake, listen carefully, said Sandra. We need to survive here for 6 hours, and we're not going to lose Tom. Sandra inspected the crash site and immediately began developing a survival plan. She would use the helicopter's lee side for wind protection, she would deploy medical blankets to prevent heat loss, and she would maintain continuous medical care for Tom. Jake, extract the helicopter's emergency supplies, flares, survival blankets, medical equipment. Jake was noticing Sandra's level of organization and command presence. Sandra, have you encountered this type of situation before? Sandra paused. Experience. But Jake could observe that Sandra's experience wasn't typical flight paramedic experience. Survival shelter construction technique, medical equipment utilization in extreme conditions, multi-patient management capability. Sandra, while continuing CPR on Tom, was treating Jake's injuries and monitoring the patient's condition. Managing 3 patients simultaneously required extraordinary medical competence. Sandra, said Jake, you're not just a flight paramedic, are you? Sandra paused ventilation on Tom and looked at Jake. The decision she made at that moment would change everything. You're right, Jake, said Sandra. I'm not just a flight paramedic. Jake waited. I'm a former Army Special Forces Medical Corps member, Major Sandra Harris, retired. 12 years special operations, 3 Afghanistan deployments, 2 Iraq tours. Jake's jaw dropped. So you conducted medical operations in combat zones? 12 years. Combat surgery, battlefield medical evacuation, Halo parachute medical operations, mountain wilderness survival. She was explaining while continuing CPR on Tom. Every compression perfect, every ventilation calculated. Why do you work as a flight paramedic? A deep pain expression appeared on Sandra's face. In 2019, on a mission in Kandahar, a school was bombed. 73 children. I couldn't save them all. Silence. Since that day, I decided to use my medical skills in the civilian sector to protect families, children. Jake now understood. Sandra's ability to handle this situation came from this. She had faced similar scenarios dozens of times in combat zones. Over the next 3 hours, Sandra created a medical miracle. She managed to restart Tom's heart, stabilized his vital signs. She sutured Jake's head laceration, bringing bleeding under control. She resolved the patient's shock condition with intravenous therapy. Sandra, Tom's pulse is strong, said Jake, monitoring vital signs. Yes, but hypothermia prevention is critical. Body temperature keeps dropping. Sandra had safely extracted fuel from the helicopter's fuel system and improvised a small heating system. She was maintaining respiratory support for patients using medical oxygen tanks. Jake, how do you feel? Dizziness or nausea? A little, but I'm okay. You're incredible, Sandra. In the 4th hour, the snowstorm intensified. Visibility dropped to 0. Sandra had to reinforce the shelter. Help me, Jake. We need to secure the blanket anchorages. Together they transformed the shelter around the helicopter into a more robust wind barrier. Sandra's military survival training was evident in every detail. At the end of the 6th hour, helicopter sounds were audible. Jake fired a flare and marked the position. Over here! We're here! He shouted. The mountain rescue team rappelled from the helicopter. The team leader was amazed when he observed the scene. How long have you been waiting here? 6 hours, said Jake. And patient conditions? Sandra delivered a professional report. Pilot Tom Richardson, acute myocardial infarction followed by cardiac arrest, 6-hour CPR and advanced life support, current vital signs stable. Hypothermia prevention measures implemented. Co-pilot Jake Morrison, head laceration, concussion symptoms, currently stable. Transport patient Michael Torres, orthopedic trauma and possible internal bleeding, condition stable. The rescue team leader looked at Sandra with respect. "Ma'am, what's your medical background?" "Flight paramedic," said Sandra. "This reporting level and medical care quality? Impossible with standard flight paramedic training." Jake intervened. "She's a former Army Special Forces Medical Corps member, Major Sandra Harris." Upon arrival at Denver Memorial Hospital, the emergency department team was impressed by Sandra's 6-hour medical care. Tom's condition was critical but stable. Jake's injuries would heal, the patient would recover completely. Dr. Elizabeth Warren, emergency medicine specialist, spoke with Sandra. "Sandra, your 6-hour medical intervention was extraordinary. Tom's survival is entirely due to your skills." "I just did my job, doctor." "No, Sandra, you performed far beyond job requirements. Can we discuss your military medical background?" Sandra hesitated. She hadn't discussed this subject with anyone for 5 years. "Major Sandra Harris, Army Special Forces Medical Corps, 2008 to 2019. Combat surgery specialist, parachute medical operations, mountain wilderness rescue." Dr. Warren's eyes lit up. "Sandra, our hospital's trauma surgery department has a need for someone like you." Sandra's partnership with Tom and Jake evolved. After understanding her background, work relationships deepened. "Sandra, your military background explains everything now," said Tom. "The military taught me techniques. Civilian work taught me community medicine. Both are necessary." "Will you continue flight paramedic work?" "Yes, plus training programs, sharing knowledge with the new generation." Sandra found perfect balance, direct patient service plus knowledge transfer to emerging medical professionals. Sandra Harris's story isn't just about heroism, it's about the continuity of service spirit, peaceful application of expertise. From special forces to flight paramedic service, from combat medicine to civilian emergency care, from tactical operations to community health care, always serving. "The military taught me tactical medicine. Civilian service taught me compassionate care. Both are essential for complete service." When crash survivors see Sandra, they say, "Real warriors don't stop serving. They find new ways to protect." Sandra's courage that day was the civilian application of special forces training, military expertise, perfectly applied in a mountain emergency. "I'm no longer a soldier, but the service spirit never ends. The mission continues, the environment changes. The community will understand in the future. Protection takes many forms." Sandra is now known as both Dr. Harris and Paramedic Sandra. In her office hangs a single photograph, her military medical team in Afghanistan. This photograph reminds her where her skills came from and shows where they're going. Tom Richardson continues piloting. Before every flight, he asks Sandra, "Ready, Angel?" Jake Morrison also continues working as a flight paramedic on Sandra's team. "We're learning from a legend," he says proudly. Sandra's story gained national attention. A military to civilian healthcare transition success story. But Sandra's greatest achievement is elsewhere. She no longer has nightmares about the children she couldn't save, but dreams about the lives she has saved. So I ask you, have you ever encountered veterans quietly serving in your emergency medical community? People with hidden military backgrounds silently contributing in civilian healthcare? Share in the comments. Because at Hidden Legends, we know that the greatest healers often serve in the most humble roles. If this story moved you, share it, subscribe, and help these important veteran stories continue. We'll see you in the next legend. And remember, next time you see an ambulance, medical helicopter, or emergency services, there might be military service backgrounds you're unaware of. Real heroes change their forms of service, but the healing spirit never ends.